And today's topic is, what is it? Screwing up, surviving, and succeeding. And I didn't come up with that topic on my own. It was actually the subject of Joe's mass email that he sent out. And I'm like, I am so on that. This is calling my name. And the reason being, and we're going to go through all this, I do want to welcome everybody from YouTube, everybody from LinkedIn. We will be taking questions. So please, by all means, pose those questions to us and I will get to them. I'm just now managing my LinkedIn space right here. So making sure that it is live and I can see comments. Excellent. And we are good across everything. So pose your, I can't see to only certain. So we've got Kristen, Tom. I can't even, ultra. I thought Akathame was hard, man. Tom,
except you're going to butcher it.
You've got your followings there, followers here. So today's conversation is really about, how do you own your mistake? Right, Joe, how do you actually own it? What does that even look like? Because I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people don't own their mistakes, do they?
No.
Yeah.
No, they don't, because it's scary. Okay. It's
horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. Hi, Sebastian. Yeah. And then, how can you recover from that? All right, first of all, Joe, let's just think about what's going on in today's environment in this country.
Which part?
There isn't nobody walking on the planet right now should ever be afraid of making a mistake because this. Yeah, right? Yeah. So right. Just a plethora of examples on how not to hide the truth and come clean. So Joe, why don't you go right into it? What was your biggest mistake that you've ever had to recover from that is just still so clear in your mind? It was like yesterday.
That's a big question. There are many. The one that always stands out is the same one that I talked about in the email. And that was just like you're talking about now, when you said people don't own their mistakes. Okay. That was a big part of this. I was going to say when you're young, right? But it's universal. Human nature is to not want to feel like you don't know what you're doing and to not want to feel like other people are scrutinizing you and saying, this guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, right? You are so afraid of not being right that it causes you to do all sorts of things that only get you into more trouble, that only make the situation worse, right? That only guarantee that you're going to get a smack, right? You're going to get a kick in the teeth. You're going to get something that hurts. And in this particular situation, it was with a client. I said it was early on when I just started my own company, right? Which was a huge leap of faith to begin with. And I was afraid and I did it anyway. But this particular client, this was a bigger client and more money than I had ever seen in my life. Okay. And I was so afraid of like leaving pause for anyone else's anything that I just sort of bulldozed them through this process, right? Because I knew exactly what they needed. You need to do this and you're failing here. And I wrote this huge novel length proposal and gave it to them, right? I just sort of went away and did my thing after my initial conversation with them. And when I presented it to them in the room, I was dying. I mean, I was literally dying. When you're in a room with 12 people and they're all looking at you like this.
That's not a good sign.
Like literally, like angry. And this is within like 3 minutes. So I'm screwed and I already know I'm screwed. Some part of me that like you're nervous and you're sweating like, oh shit, how do I turn this around? So all I could do was keep going, right? And finally, someone in the room spoke up, but one of the high-level people, and basically said to me, none of this has anything to do with our core business or our customers.
Oh boy.
Like, what do you actually know about this company? And I went, and that feels exactly like you think it feels. And I fell on my sword. I said, you know what?
Oh, hold on a second. I want to paint a mental and visual picture of this. When that happens to me, my face gets red, my body gets heated. I almost feel throw up? What happened? It's like seeing in your rear view mirrors, those little lights that go in a circle. Make that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Your body temperature goes up 1,000,000 degrees and you can feel yourself vibrating.
Yeah.
And you're like cold sweats and you're just, every molecule in your body just wants to be somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. You melt right into your shoes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really, really tremendously scary. And the only thing I could think to do, and my father always said this to me growing up, and he still says it. He always said that in the best and worst you can do in any situation is tell the truth. Like, in other words, there is nothing else to do. Right? Don't, when you know you're screwed, don't keep going. Don't keep pushing. Don't keep digging. Right? If you're digging yourself a hole. So I said, look, you guys are right. I didn't do any of the requisite digging that I should have. I didn't ask you the right questions. And I really, really fell on my sword hard. And I said, look, if you want to part ways, I totally understand. And that's actually what happened. I wound up giving them their money back. And I walked, and I've experienced variations of that throughout my career. I've made those mistakes like that. I never made that one in particular again.
Yeah,
because that was horrific. I was depressed for probably months after that.
Yeah, it's a hard one. So can we drill down a little bit more on that? So so what would you do differently? Not about the solution itself, but would you, when you immediately see that body language of this, would you just stop right then? Would you recommend stopping right then instead of even trying to go down the path? Yeah.
Yeah, because I see that now. Okay. If you walk into a room with stakeholders, it's a safe bet that if there are more than 2 people in the room, at least one of them thinks you're full of shit.
Right.
From word go. I mean, that's I'm honest. That's almost a given.
Yep.
So what I do now, and what I've done for years now, is that when I see that body language happen, when I see this, or when I see this, or someone picking up their phone to be like, this guy's a moron. Okay. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
I call it out in a gentle, nice way.
So how do you call that out? I mean, by the way, this is so much more. There's so much more to this than just screwing up. And there's a whole process of how to manage this piece of communication. And you learn this over time. And that's why this conversation is so important, especially for new people, right? We don't want them falling on their face and not knowing, how to pick it back up again, or how to prevent falling on your face, even more importantly. So tell us exactly what you would do differently in that moment in time.
Yeah. Let me back up to one other thing as well, because one thing I do at the beginning of every, and it's like a kickoff session, right? And my thing is I want everybody there from all departments, anyone who's even tangentially involved in this product, because they've got issues, they've got agendas, they've got political battles, and I want all that stuff on the table right now. But one of the things I do at the outset is I say, if you hear anything that you vehemently disagree with, if you hear anything that makes you physically uncomfortable, okay, if you hear anything that makes you go, oh my God, why are we here? You need to tell me. That's why we're in this room. All right. I'm not going to take offense to that, and which is the truth. I'm not going to take offense to it. We're going to talk about it because it is an important component of getting us all to collaborate in a way that gets us all what we want, right? Because that is sort of the order of the day. So when that body language happens, number one, if nobody follows my rule and speaks up, I say, I'll look at that person. I'll say, I see what you're doing with your face right now. And I say it in a laughing kind of way. Tell me what's going on. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you reacting to? Most times that they'll laugh a little bit and they'll tell me. All right. And I tell them, you can be totally honest. You're not going to offend me. You're not going to upset me. Speak freely. Okay. Because we're here for the truth all day long. And for the next 3 days, 5 days, 3 months, whatever the engagement is, we're here for the truth. We're going to live in what is, not what's supposed to be, not what might be, not what we wish would be. We're going to live in the truth. Here's the reality of the situation, because we don't start there, we're not going to accomplish anything. I'm going to tell you that right now. I've been doing this too long. So just tell me. And 9 times out of 10, they will. Okay. And it's something that they're frustrated about, pissed off about. it's a question that they've been raising for 8 months that has been ignored. Okay. Here's my thing. And I want you all to understand this. Very rarely is that reaction about you. Okay. It's almost always about something else. It's almost always some other agitation or some fear or some friction, political battles, stuff that's been going on way the hell before you walked in the door.
Yeah.
All right. Which is another reason why you cannot take it personally and you cannot try to gloss over it and pretend it's not happening. It's a reality.
So, Joe, let me just make sure, because that's a really important part. So what you're trying to say is everybody's got baggage.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Everybody walks into a meeting with baggage because they had a life before they got into that meeting.
Yes.
Whatever life they had before they got into that meeting, they're bringing it with them. You know, if it's stuck in the forefront of their mind, they got that with them. And you could be that target of that aggression, that anger, that, that degree of depression or sadness or whatever it is, concern. You could be dealing with that as well. So wow.
Yeah, and this is my problem, okay, and it's why I do what I do, and it's why I've, in the last couple of years in particular, I've tried to shift what I do with online courses and online teaching and conference keynotes and all sorts of stuff. I'm sort of trying to shift into, here's how we deal with all the messy parts of doing this work that nobody talks about, that we're not taught to deal with, right? And that is getting beat up. It's getting things thrown at you in a way, right? It's getting those reactions. It's all the personal baggage and political baggage and wars that happen inside organizations that have nothing to do with you, but you nonetheless have to deal with because it impacts you, right? It lands in your lap. People are fighting with you and you're thinking to yourself, like, what are we fighting about? Like, what is your agenda here? What's the problem? The only way that you prevent that from turning into a terrible situation where you get your ass kicked is if you talk about it and manage it and dig into it and allow it to become part of the work you're doing. Okay. The personal and political aspects of what happens inside an organization absolutely finds its way into the user experience and design of a product. It absolutely does. Okay. And unless you get some of that stuff out on the table early on, unless you figure out what the hell it is and where it's coming from and what's driving the behavior, you can make improvements, but teams and organizations and people are going to keep finding themselves in the same situations over and over and over and over and over again until you dig deeper to fix that problem somewhere else. I can't tell you how many times I've said to VPs or CEOs, look, one-on-one conversation, until you get this person to talk to this person like a human being, this problem's not going away. I can't tell you how to do that. It's not my company. But I am telling you, based on what I've seen in the last 3 days, this shit has got to stop, because if it doesn't, you're going to be right where you were when I'm gone.
So, Joe, let's tie this back to why I stopped having you go down that. Because if we don't solve this, the problems that actually we create are even harder to overcome. Yes. So if we know that these challenges internally, maybe there's an internal conflict going on, bureaucracy, politics, whatever, if we don't address that up front and we go down that path of working on this project as a consultant, that becomes your fault.
That's right. Entirely. And that's back to the screwing up part. Okay. The mistake is not acknowledging. The mistake is pretending like it's not happening. You will be held responsible. Period. Whether it's your problem or not.
So has that happened? I know that's happened to people in this world. I know that, especially in the UX domain, but has that happened when that piece of the initiative hasn't been solved, that internal bureaucratic stuff? It does impact the program or the project that you're supporting and the outcome of that. How does that reflect on you? Like that story you started with, that was on you. That was totally on you. But absolutely. I'm sure you've worked on other projects where internal complications affected the outcome. What do? You're at the end of the project.
There's only one thing you can do. And I think you have to do it. Not only do you have to do it at that point, right, in the project's end, but you have to make a couple shots across the bow before that. And that is when you see that there's a bottleneck, when you see that there's one person who is a bully, when you see that there is one person who absolutely refuses to have a reasonable conversation with anybody, right? Who just wants to fold their hands and refuse to play nice, whatever it is. You have to raise that to the person. If you're a consultant, you have to raise it to the person that brought you in the first place. You have to raise it to their bosses, okay, who are footing the bill. And in a situation where you're working in-house, you kind of have to make it known to the powers that be as well, right? Your boss, their boss, and say, look, here's the situation. This person, for whatever reason, is just antagonistic and they're bullying, and people are afraid to speak out loud now, and we're getting nowhere. And I don't know what to do about this. I've tried to have a one-on-one conversation with this person. Here's how it went. You have to, even if nothing comes of it, all right, this is really important. Even if nothing comes of it, okay, nobody reprimands that person, nothing changes. Even if nothing comes of it, you have to be on record as saying, here's what's going on, here's the problem, here's how it's affecting us, right? Here's the damage that's being done. And we're not going to get anywhere unless this is solved. And then at the end of the project, you do it again. In my wrap up, and I always do a wrap up. Very rarely do I have deliverables, okay, other than what we do in the room together. But I always have a wrap up, and sometimes it's just a long email that says, here's what I saw, okay, in the last 5 days, the last 5 weeks, here's what I witnessed. And that has to be part of it as well. Like I said to you, that conversation I had with the VP, and it sucks to have that conversation. I hate it. It makes me terribly uncomfortable, believe it or not, okay?
I wonder why it doesn't be uncomfortable to have those conversations. Anyway.
Well, because
I mean, people do literally stay up nights. Having difficult conversations. There's all kinds of books written about that, and speakers about that. But really and truly, how much of that is an innate quality where you just your integrity is at stake, and you want to do good work. I think that's the foundation of why those conversations aren't as difficult for me, because it's not about ego and pride. It's about doing the right thing.
No, it's not about this. It's not about ego or pride. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
For me, here's what it is. I'm a sensitive person. Okay. I grew up, I was a sensitive kid. For whatever reason, that's how I'm wired. All right. It's not hard to hurt me. It wasn't hard to hurt me when I was a kid. It's not hard to hurt me now. I'm sensitive. There's no two ways around that. I don't know what that is. I've stopped shit at 51. I don't think about it anymore, or agonize over why that is. I don't care. It just is. So I naturally want everybody to be pleased and to be happy and to be whatever. But what I did have to figure out, and that story we started with was one of those times, what you eventually figure out is that you're never going to feel good about anything unless you can feel like you did the right thing and you did everything you could to make something go the way that it should. And you did what you believe in, right? You drew boundaries around things and said, here's what I'm doing and here's what I'm not doing. It probably took me longer than it should have to learn that. I think I was probably in my 30s before I really firmly started drawing lines and boundaries and saying, you know what, I'm going to tell the truth, and what you do with that is entirely up to you. So
yeah,
it doesn't make me necessarily less comfortable during those conversations, but I certainly don't doubt what I'm doing in any way. All right. I don't have any reticence about saying or doing those things, because I know what the downside is. And the downside is you're going to get something that's really going to hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. More so than if you didn't say something.
Yeah.
So how did you recover? So you didn't recover from that first one. You gave them back their money, walked away. Did you ever hear from them again? Do you ever talk?
No.
Do you ever dream about them? Do you ever journal about them?
I have an entire wall in my house devoted to that project.
A little temple.
It's chalk. I'm sorry. No. To be honest with you, I don't think about it other than I think it's a great story, right? I tell that story often because I feel like it's important to, number one, I think that when you and I started to talk about this, I think at the beginning, before we got on live, if you think you're going to do anything without significant risk to yourself or your reputation or your livelihood or whatever you're dreaming. Okay. That risk is there all the time. The possibility that you could screw up is there all the time. That's real. And guess what? You're going to make mistakes. There's no doubt about that. What I say to people all the time is there's no doubt you're going to get hit. All right. That's going to happen. Life is going to knock you down in your career and your personal life and your whatever. It's just a given. There are bumps in the road. That's a fact. The only thing that's within your power, okay, is what you do about them, right? When you're confronted with that situation, how you react makes all the difference, okay? It's just a simple act of getting back up a lot of times is enough. I was on a User Defenders podcast and I said something that seemed to resonate with a lot of people, but it's something that I believe. And it's this comes directly from my father. One of the most important superpowers you can have in this or any other profession is resilience. Mm-hmm. Okay. I said a minute ago, I'm a sensitive person. I'm a sensitive kid, which means I get hurt. But the one thing that's never going to happen is I'm never going to stay down. Okay. I'm just not. I refuse. It's not going to happen until I'm in the ground. That's not going to happen. One thing I'm not going to do is lay down. It's just not going to happen. All right. And that is a lot of times for me, that is enough to push through and power through and get the outcome that you want in the first place.
So these are some pretty powerful personal revealings for people that may not know you as well. And I haven't met you. I haven't known you very long. And right now I feel like we've,
I'm a weird combination. I mean, I can be as confident as a wrecking ball, right? Yeah, and be sensitive at the same time. Go figure.
But I want you to hear some of the comments that are coming through. Alberto Orsini writes, there is rank and there is humanity. It is hard letting your humanity go when you're applying rank. Sensitivity is part of it. And the most difficult part, in my experience, is channeling it as needed.
Absolutely. Balance.
Hard conversations are had, he said. Kristen's just going, yep.
Yeah, that's the truth, right?
You needed to hear this today. So thank you so much.
Tom, you're welcome. You have to show your colors.
Yep. Okay. So we didn't hear from that client. You refunded their money and you went on. How many years ago was that?
Oh man, this was 99, 2000. It was right around when the .com boom happened.
20 years.
Yeah. It was right around when the boom happened because we were riding the wave. Okay. I jumped ship at the right time. We were really riding the wave where companies were just like, is it digital? Here's my money. Right. It didn't matter what it was, and I say all the time, I was doing the Bill Gates thing. We talk about fear and fear of screwing up. I was doing the Bill Gates thing where anything anybody asked me, do you know how to do this? My answer to everything was yes. Can you do? Yes, absolutely. And I would go back and I had at 1.3 employees and 6 employees. I would go back in the office and say, all right, anyone know how to do this?
You just find somebody who does it. Right.
So we were riding the rails, sort of at all times. But yeah, that's how long ago that was. And like I said, they gave us a lot of money to get this right. And we were absolutely capable of doing it. Okay. But I screwed it up. I let my fear of needing to be the expert, right? This sense I have to be right. I'm the expert. So I have to lead the charge. I have to, instead of collaborating, right? Asking, instead of being open and honest, instead of being willing to be wrong about things and learn, which is really the heart and soul of what we all do. I really tried hard to cement my expertise, and man, was it the wrong call.
So now I want those who are watching to understand that I often, not sometimes, I often catch my guests off guard with some of the questions because they say something that triggers another question in my thought.
All good.
And but they're never to set anybody up for failure or discomfort. But I am going to ask you this because I think it's a critical question to ask. I know that people, it's been my experience in representing user experience thought leaders, people like you and others who are driving UX in the marketplace, really big-brained, ridiculously big-brained, big thinkers. I mean, I can represent the hell out of you people, but I could never do what you do. Mm-hmm. When I ask them to tell their stories to me so that I can represent them, they go right down the path of all the negative things that they've done. They will look at a project and they will say, this is the really technical people. These are people who are so deep in the technical aspects that they'll go, I went all the way through this and this went wrong and this went wrong and this went wrong. So I'm having to move them into the positive outcomes of those stories, right? All of that may not have gone the way you wanted it to, but what actually worked really well. So how do you, when somebody asks you, what is a story that you would not repeat again, meaning what mistake have you made in your career that you would not repeat again, how would you recommend that they position that without covering anything up, creating, as they say, shade, doing something that, how do you represent that part of your, because it is part of your story.
Of course.
How would you represent yourself in that way?
By focusing on the outcome of that. Okay. Like here's another one of my things. And I think I borrowed this from somebody, quite frankly, because people have given me credit for it and I really don't think it's mine. I always say either you win or you learn. Right? Failure is not failure. It's learning. Okay. And you either learn the lesson or you don't. Right? That's a different conversation. But to me, the way that you talk about failure, and I think it's okay. I think it's entirely okay to talk about failure, but you have to talk about it in terms of the outcome of that situation. What did you learn? Okay. What did you not repeat? What did you do differently the next time that got you a very different result? Right? How did it change the way that you conducted yourself from that point forward? That to me is what that story is about. Failure is fine. We can talk about what went wrong, but it's only valuable to talk about what went wrong if something positive and valuable and useful came out of it, right? Something that you could apply to something else. Part of the reason I talk about failure, for example, in my private groups or with students via messaging or email or in my courses at conferences is simply so that people feel like, okay, yeah, like this person has made mistakes too. I'm not superhuman. I don't have any omnipotent powers. So I think it's okay to talk about failure, but I think if you're not doing it in a way that says, here's what I gained from that experience, right? And here's how it made me better at what I do, there's no point in telling the story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And we've got a lot of comments about this going forward. So I heard a couple of different things. And like Sebastian said, failing forward is a great way to look at it.
Sure.
But what I just heard was that by admitting your own faults, your own mistakes, you allow other people to make mistakes.
Yes. And
admit them and not feel bad about them. So why is that important for an organization? And why is that important within the UX practice? Why that is critical? Why is that so critical from your perspective?
Because people don't tell the truth unless they feel safe to do so. That's why. Okay. And a big problem, and this is why I go back to, I'm always harping on the personal and political inside organizations with UX problems, because until we get the truth, all right, about what's going on here, we can't freaking fix anything. All right. We can't. And psychological safety, for as much airtime as that gets, those two words, it really doesn't exist in a lot of places. There is still, in this country in particular, command and control is still very much a way of life for an older guard of executives and shareholders and all the way down the line, right? This is how they run their business. And exposing weakness is like, well, we can't do that. It's the same reason why companies are afraid to let designers and UXers talk to users, talk to end users, talk to customers. There's this fear around like something will get exposed. Like,
I mean, I haven't run up against that. I'm sure, like I said, I'm not an active practitioner. You guys are, but is that prominent? Is that prevalent? That companies don't want you talking to their users because they're afraid of what they're going to find out.
Oh, it's still very prevalent, and people who are joining us could probably weigh in as well. I will tell you that consistently over my career, right down to the last 4 months of my life, I still see that to varying degrees. Okay. In organizations, there's fear. There's fear of like the bad stuff getting out. And here's the news. Here's what I tell these organizations, right? And that's what I tell these people who confess this stuff to me, executives in particular. I say, look, they know. Okay. Do you think you think your customers don't know where you're failing? Do you think they're not aware of it? You think they're not feeling it? You and I wouldn't be having this conversation if they weren't feeling it, if they didn't know something was screwed up. Give me a break.
Yeah, no, wait a minute. There's something that's missing here. Is it the users that they don't want to hear from because they're afraid of what they're going to say about the product, or say what they're going to say about their own work?
Both.
So the stakeholder is more afraid of their own reputation being tarnished based on that user feedback.
Yeah, because
really what the problem is.
The imposter syndrome part of all of us hears, you're screwing up. You're a screw up. You can't do it. You can't make this right. You can't fix it. You can't do anything right. There's all this stuff that as human beings we're afraid of. That to me is what the core of that is. And there've been like, I've heard Erica Hall in terms of user research talk about this several times as well. A lot of times companies and people in management positions are opposed to user research because they're kind of afraid of what it's going to confirm, right? And then because once it's on paper, once it's shared, once it's disseminated, well, now it's real. And now we have to deal with it. And now like, who's going to be looking at me? Like, how did you let this get this bad? There are all these fears. It doesn't mean that anybody's going to come down on them like that. But that sort of Damocles that I always say is hanging over people's heads. It doesn't matter whether it's real or not. Okay. If it's imagined, it's there. It's there and it has to be dealt with.
So you're the user X, you're the UX, pro going in to try to save the day, and you're trying to increase revenue because that's really what we do, right? We want to make these products easier, better to use, so the company can generate more revenue, boost their brands, improve efficiencies, blah blah blah. So again, tying this back into the risk of you screwing up because somebody else was afraid to face facts. How do you, we talked about, is there I guess I'm just going to get to the point. At what point do you walk away and just say, this is not going to be a success in my portfolio because because you guys don't want to play in the sandbox? Yeah.
Well, to me, you walk away. When I walk away is when I know the outcome is going to be bad. All right. When I can tell that there's a tremendous amount of fear and uncertainty, okay, and worry and stress. And this is the kind of situation where if we don't get this right fairly quickly, the business as a whole is going to pay a very high price, and we're all individually going to pay a very high price. Mm-hmm. And if I get the sense that there's nothing I'm going to be able to do to change that, I will pretty much say, you know what, you guys are for whatever reason, you're dead set on going down this path. And I say as clearly as I possibly can, here's what I think is going to happen. Okay. In a way you're saying, look, I've seen this movie at least 20 times. Here's how it usually ends. This is what I see. All right. It's what you're paying me for, to be honest with you. And that's what I'm doing right now because that's respect. Okay. You trusted me with your money. You've trusted me with your time. And I feel very responsible to tell you the truth. Here's what I think is going to happen. If we don't go down the path of at least finding out, digging into these areas or whatever it is, here's what I think is going to happen. And I honestly don't want to be around for that. Okay. Wow. It's painful. It's going to hurt. And I can't in good conscience allow you or be part of walking you down a path that is going to turn around and smack you in the face. All right. I can't do that. It's not nice. If nothing else, right?
Had to do that, Joe? Have you gotten up and walked out? Have you ended the contract early? And what was their response?
They were shocked. They're usually very shocked when you do that because the prevailing wisdom is like, well, you don't want money? Of course. Okay. And if you think there's no fear involved in walking away from a job, especially when the money's very good, you'd be dead wrong. Okay. There's absolutely part of you up here is going, how dare you do this? Right? Yeah. Who the hell do you think you are to walk away from work? At the same time, the reason I do it now and the reason I can do it with a clear conscience is because I had to learn that lesson the hard way too.
Oh, what happened?
Oh, several times where I went down a path with a client that I knew was the wrong path. I knew it was going to blow up, right? I knew that the numbers they were hoping for, they were never going to see. I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew. And in a couple cases, especially early on in my career, I went along with it because I'm like, well, they're the client and I need to make money. And I did need to make money. Okay. I had 6 employees and I was responsible for other human beings. And that was like a sword over my head 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my own family, to fend for as well, because you're bold enough or arrogant enough or whatever to say, I'm going to go do this myself. Screw working for other people. So you're feeling all sorts of pressure, right? But I learned the hard way is that not only did it blow up in my face, I had a hell of a time getting paid in 2 of those instances.
Oh, wow.
Right. Where it dragged out over a year because they said to me, are you kidding me? We did all this work and spent all this time and committed all this money. And this is what we got. Are you out of your mind? We're supposed to pay you now.
So that's a screw up, right?
Of course it is.
On your side of the street.
Of course it is.
And on your side of, this is actually turning into like Real with Joe. So, we're exposing everything, Joe. So when you, that you own that.
Absolutely. Look, here's the thing. Okay. And I try to say this as often as possible as well. I'm in a position right now, and this is going to sound like it's really, it's me doing this. All right. I'm really not. I'm at a point in my life right now where I have a lot of choice. Okay. I have a lot of control over what I take on, what I decide to do, what I don't decide to do. I have choices now that I never had.
That didn't happen overnight.
No, it didn't. And this is my point. Okay. That success and that luck and the fortunate position that I'm in right now is in some ways a direct result from having those experiences. Okay. And learning from them. There were a couple mentors when I was first coming up and started my own thing. One guy in particular, Ed Gold, here in Baltimore, who was like, I love him like I love my own father. He said to me, there were lots of lessons. We used to have lunch all the time. And he was an older guy, someone I really respected. And he was trying to teach me all the time, right? And I was bullheaded when I was young and I didn't always listen. But these were the kinds of things he told me. He would say, you have got to walk away from bad clients. You have got to fire bad clients. You got to get up and say, I'm not doing this. It's not worth it. And he kept trying to tell me it's going to hurt you, all right, to go down this path. When you're younger, you can't necessarily see that. So until I learned, okay, that it wasn't worth going down the path with them, even if you got the money, the amount of emotional stress and damage that it does to you as a person, that it does to your relationships, that it does to your you and your colleagues' relationships, that the price is just too high. And there are other things that you could be doing in that same span of time that are going to push you forward, right? There are other clients. There are better experiences. I had a client once who used to circle every invoice I sent them in red and fax it back to me. This is the days when people still use fax machines. All my prices were set out in stone in a contract and an estimate. I never deviated from what I said something was going to cost in those days, okay? Because we scoped things pretty well. So she knew what the cost was going to be. But she would circle the number on the invoice. Say, why is this so expensive? You signed a contract agreeing to that cost. Why are we having this conversation? I dealt with her for 2 years doing this. Okay. And this was early on too. This is around the same time frame as the other story I told you. And finally, like Ed's voice was in my head saying, fire this person. And finally I walked away and said, you know what? I'm not playing this game with you anymore. So
what happened?
She was angry. She was angry. And actually she tried to convince me to stay. And I said, look, we've had this conversation a number of times and nothing's changed. And you are who you are and I'm who I am. And it's just not a good fit. Okay. So I walked away and that was that. But my point was, right, if I enjoy the position I'm in right now, it is a direct result from not only having those experiences, right? Not only from screwing up, but from making sure, okay, that I applied what I learned subsequently. So for you guys who are working for yourselves, All right. I'm going to give you the same advice that Ed gave me that I had a hard time taking. There are some situations where you have to walk away. You have to withdraw and say, look, I can do this for you, but I can't do it this way. And here's why. It may feel like the wrong thing to do. Every bone in your body will say, how dare you? How irresponsible of you, right? The unkind things that we all say to ourselves, that will be there, but you have to do it. All right. If you're going to succeed and go forward, you have to do it. In a lot of cases, I will also say this, there have been an equal number of cases, if not more actually, where I've done that thing where I say, you know what, this is not working. We're not doing this. And they've said, okay, tell us what to do. We'll behave.
That's kind of like going, again, I always liken this level of expertise to that of a physician. You just don't have it's unfortunate that the UX domain isn't viewed as the CPAs, as the legal, or as the medical.
It's not going to be.
And it's not going to be. We can have another conversation about that, Joe, because that's really nails on a chalkboard to me about why it's not like that.
Of course.
But I do think that people in jobs, they are working for a company. They are not working for themselves, and they don't have the opportunity to walk away from stuff. And this is prevalent across all professions, right? But what's different about the user experience practice is that you guys really can't walk away. If you're an employee of an organization, right, and they are maybe the product manager or the business leader, the vice president is saying, I want you to do this, and that's it. As we say in my family, basta, right? I just want you to do it this way, and I don't want to hear any noise. I mean, I've heard those words at me. And, I know how I handled it and how it turned out, but I'm curious, what do you suggest that a user experience professional do if they're an employee of an organization and they know that they're just about to throw the baby and the bathwater out the window in the street in front of an 18-wheeler?
Here's the deal. Okay. Succinctly, you don't say it this way, but you say no. All right. And here's what I mean. I firmly believe, and you or anybody else is never going to convince me otherwise. I believe that every person in every organization has more power than they believe that they have. Okay. There's always something you can do. It doesn't mean you're going to change other people. It doesn't mean that you're going to change their ask or their opinion or their expectation. That's not what I'm talking about here. You have a choice as to how you respond. I gave this advice to somebody this morning, okay, on a product team. If someone comes to you and says, we have to have this, and this by this date, and you absolutely know that is not possible unless you bend the laws of time and space, which is a power you do not possess. If you know that's not possible, you simply say, here are the pieces I can give you by that date. Matter of factly, without emotion, without going like, there's no way we have to say, don't do all that. Matter of fact, voice even, say, well, here are the parts I can do. Or in an email, here are the things we can have done by that date. And you have to simply refuse to engage in the back and forth. But we have to. Your answer does not change. Here are the things I can have by that date. Anything that happens beyond that is a bonus, okay? Here's what I know I can commit to. I do not want to put you in a position where I promise a bunch of stuff and then we're late, okay? It's not done. The day comes and you're upset, I'm upset, client's upset, everybody's pissed off. This isn't good for anybody. So all I can tell you is that I can have these things by this date. That's the end of it. You understand? There's no argument. There's no back and forth. There's no debating.
So you don't engage. That's what I do. I just don't engage.
That's right.
This is what it is, and I don't engage. I disengage from that.
That's right. Matter of fact, you stay even. You don't let your emotions get into the conversation, and that's it. No one can change that for you. Okay.
I remember telling a hiring manager, if you think that it can be achieved, you're going to need to find somebody else to achieve it.
That's right.
That is not going to, that is how I create choice, that you give that person a choice. If you want me to do it, this is what I can deliver. If you believe that a different outcome is available to you, then you might want to seek a different resource, either on the team, inside the company, outside the company. It doesn't make a difference. But my hands, again, as we say, there's nothing else I can do beyond that. My capability is maxed at that.
That's right. And you have to be honest about that, and you have to be straightforward. You have that power. Nobody has the ability. We have this idea that people can somehow force us to do things. It's not true. It's absolutely not true. Okay. Just like, let's think of another example, options, right? Designers and UI designers in particular get this one where the people want variations. Well, I need 3 options, 3 versions of that by this. Okay. I am absolutely positively opposed to options, to variations. I'm going to give you one option based on everything we know right now, based on research, based on data, based on evidence, based on what the devs are working on. We're going to go here first. We're going to go down that path and we're going to see whether it holds water or not. And then if it doesn't, if it's a bust, then we'll tweak it and modify it and change it and improve it. 3 options, 3 variations is bullshit all day long. It solves nothing. Okay. It solves nothing and only gets you into more trouble.
Right. But do you think that is, Joe, because they don't understand user experience, that it's different than 3 comps for a web design or for a brochure?
Yes. Yes. And there are times, look, in terms of pure UX, right? If you're saying, let's say it's a task flow, right? It's just boxes and arrows. Someone starts here, does this, then, this kind of thing. I'll show it to you. All right.
Right.
There may be 3 or 4 possibilities there. That's fine. But that's low fidelity, right? That's just here are 3 possible ways this could go. Let's investigate. Let's talk. Let's collaborate. That's a different animal. But when somebody wants finished variations, even if it's that task flow, right? And you say, I want like finished versions with full detail. The answer is no. Okay. Just no all day long. And again, you say that the same way.
That's
Here's
right.
what I can do. All right. If we want to really solve this problem and we want this client to be happy and we want to make sure that the developers aren't hamstrung, right, by not knowing what the hell they're supposed to be doing, then here's the way we're going to do it. And you can say that kindly, calmly, gently, without emotion.
Yep.
You don't have to agree to anything you don't agree with.
So this is another point. I mean, and Tom and Kristen are saying, give them 3 options and it will spiral into more.
Yes.
And Tom is saying, doesn't that take an immense amount of honesty? Meaning, here's what I can give you, and I think the root is that as a practitioner, I work with 2 kinds of practitioners. One, those who are very self-aware, extremely knowledgeable, and accepting their own capabilities and limitations, right? When they know to bring in additional resource or know when to walk away. The other type of UX designer I've worked with and represented are those that are very talented but not self-aware. And I see a very distinct occurrence in their portfolios and their stories where one is blaming, the other is, this is the facts, this is what happened, this is part of my story, I accept it and I move on. Mm-hmm. So as the UX expert in the room, if you are trying to minimize your screw ups, this self-awareness becomes even more important, doesn't it?
Yes, unquestionably.
So how do they get to that point? We've got senior people on this call, I can tell you that right now. And we've also got some folks who are relatively new. What advice can you give them about how to manage through this self-awareness so that you minimize the screw ups in your career? Because I think that's key, don't you, Joe?
It totally is. And here's what happens, right? You're afraid, like the 2 scenarios that we just talked about, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're saying, no, here's what's realistic. Here's what I can reasonably pull off. That's scary to do, especially if you're new, right? Because the general consensus, general pressure in an organization is, well, they hired me. They gave me a job that I can't believe I'm lucky enough to have, because imposter syndrome runs rampant in the creative fields in particular. So you're fearful to do it, but it's like exercising. It's like working out. It's like lots of other things that are the same way. The first time you do it, it's going to suck. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It's going to feel unnatural. You're going to feel like you're going to be worried about what people think of you, all sorts of things. But you have to do it. And what you find is that after you've done it a couple times, then it starts to become second nature. And what you learn is that if you say something calmly enough and matter-of-factly enough, it'll come across sort of as fact, and people actually question it less. Mm-hmm. If you want an argument, okay, if you want somebody to be like, well, this has to be this way, and you want to do that for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, the best way to enable that is to get emotional, okay, and push back or be argumentative or combative or I'm looking for other adjectives. You have to, what I always say to people, young people especially, because I'll give you the advice first, and then I'm going to tell you the backstory. You have to be calm in the face of all storms. Okay. That's the gig. You have to simply remain calm and matter of fact and not allow emotion to drive what you're saying. Here's how I learned that lesson, since we're talking about screw ups and things that you've learned along the way. When I was younger, and like you, right? I'm Sicilian. Okay. So I'm automatically, I'm this all the time. Okay. Very emotional, very like strong willed, like people's like in my family, people think we're yelling at each other. Right. Okay. And to a degree. And we're like, no, that's just, we're talking.
We're talking.
That's how we talk.
Right.
It's normal. So that's me, right? And anyone who's watched any of my videos can see that, all right? I can't keep my hands still. If you freeze frame in any video I've ever made, my chances are my face is going to be like this. Okay, it's ridiculous. So when I was working for an agency, this was like right after college. I sort of got a reputation. So when people like lose their shit, and people say you're having a conniption or you're having a fit or whatever, they started calling it having an Natoli.
Oh,
like, look, don't have an Natoli, okay? That was my reputation, because I was the person who would get upset and get on my soapbox and be like, this is what, we can't do this way. It's not right. It goes against design principles. And, I was doing my thing. And it got to be detrimental, because then people don't want to engage with me,
right?
Because they're afraid of getting an argument. And my manager at the time, who was a wonderful, wonderful guy, sat me down one day, and this is where it changed. Okay. He told me that. He said, look, people are sort of afraid to talk to you at this point. And that sucks, because I know you have tremendous talent and tremendous ability, and you're good at this. And people are starting to walk around you instead of to you.
Oh, wow.
So he said, here's the thing. What we're doing here is not brain surgery. No one's going to die if we get it wrong. No one's going to die if maybe we try something and it doesn't work out. All right. It's not that serious. So I know that you care about this stuff. I know that you're worried about it. I can see that. But for your own sake, right, take it down a couple notches. And I did. I became really conscious of that, and pretty much stopped doing that. And a lot of things changed, right, as a result. And that's sort of where I started to learn that lesson. And now that is no matter what happens in the room. And I've been in the middle of some crazy stuff, right? In some cases where two people are literally like going to kill each other if this goes on any further. I've been there before too.
Yeah.
You got to stay here at all times.
Yeah.
It's the only way there's going to be a positive outcome. So even if you're saying something that's difficult, it'll come across 1,000 times better if you can keep your voice even and modulated and calm like mine is right now.
And it takes everything we've got, Joe.
Yes.
That's not who we are by nature. I mean,
No.
I think that we're on an equal plateau there with that emotional side. It has taken me everything I've got. Age does help. There's also a book out there that I would highly recommend that everybody read. I don't know the author, but it's called Change Your Questions, Change Your Life. So when you take the ego out of things, when I do screw up, the first thing I do is admit it. There's no other way to get around it. I did that. It's out on the table. Let's fix it and either move on or I'll move on. Whatever you want to do is fine with me. You just have to be comfortable with any outcome. Something in your favor.
Right.
You've got to have the guts to do that and the resilience to know that there's going to be another opportunity to do some good in the world. But it's that removal of the ego tends to remove the fear. When I make it not about me, when I make it about the project, when I make it about the people who are going to be affected by that product or that project, it changes everything. And instead of asking those questions to find judgment and fault, I ask questions that help me understand the situation. And I can provide a lot better solutions, right?
Yeah.
And then I can sleep at night. Because when we're operating where you were talking about when you just came out of school and into your first job, how was your sleep? How was your quality of life? I know. Paint the picture between your quality of life then, and that's how we're going to close out this session. Your quality of life, not admitting fault and being able to move on is one aspect, but your quality of life, Joe, now, when you're able to see it, call it, move on, what's the difference between those two scenarios? And to get people to that point, what is the one piece of advice you would give them?
One piece of advice. I mean, what I keep coming back to as I'm thinking about the question, I keep coming back to the same point, in that you have to be the person who you have to do two things, okay, at all times. And that is, number one, remain calm. And number two, tell the truth. Tell the truth. Okay. Ask the question that you have to ask. Say the thing that you think needs to be said, because in every one of those situations, here's the other truth. Okay. And I've said this before, so it sounds like I'm repeating myself, I suppose, but when you say something out loud, when you ask the thing that you think is a stupid question, or when you say the thing that you know is an uncomfortable thing to say, I promise you, if you're in a room of more than two people, at least one other person is thinking the same thing, feeling the same thing, having the same concern, having the same tension in their chest, whatever it is. And it needs to be said. It might as well be you. And what I've learned again and again over 29 years, right, doing this, is that there is very rarely, in fact, I would say almost never, some terrible penalty to pay for simply telling the truth. Okay. A lot of the times we get ourselves into trouble. A lot of the times things go sideways inside organizations, inside departments, in our own human personal relationships, whatever it is. A lot of times when things go sideways is because we're just not telling the truth.
Yeah.
Okay? And when you do that, I think we talked about psychological safety before, right? I think that when you tell the truth, when you're honest, when you're open, it allows other people to be that way as well. All right. You're giving permission to everybody to just be honest.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? Just like when I present, I don't present, right? When I'm having conversations with executives or teams, my language is very plain. Okay. My expressions are very simple. And if I'm concerned about something, if I feel like something's not coming out, I'll say, look, guys, I'm here because I don't want any of this to blow up in your face. Okay. I don't want you to continue to live with the stress that you're living with every day. I don't want you to keep getting what you're getting right now. So it doesn't have to be this way.
So you're actually checking your motives. You're putting other people first and you're checking your motives.
Always.
Yeah. I think those are two important things too. Check your motives, put principles above personalities. And it's amazing to me what has happened. It's a game changer in life. So screwing up isn't so bad. You survive. Nope. You're doing very well. You're living happy. You're sleeping well. You're eating well. You have a beautiful family. You've got, everything that you want. And to what extent do you attribute that to this emotional intelligence of being able to own up and move on?
Almost all of it.
Yeah.
Almost all of it.
It's that important.
Yeah, it is. It's at the core of everything, because you can do all the right things in terms of mechanical action, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't get this part right, you're gonna pay, and you're gonna pay, and you're gonna pay, and you're gonna pay, and it's never gonna get any better because you keep sort of treading the same roads.
Yep. So I'm going to close out with some comments for you from your audience. It's easier to be honest because I don't have to keep track of honesty. Lies are hard to keep straight and usually. Sebastian is saying keeping a level head and not getting outwardly emotional, very important. Bren Brown books were recommended by Kristen.
Yeah.
I think that's got them all. I think that Kristen is, or no, Patricia says great presentation. Thank you. So I'm going to, yeah. And first of all, I want to thank Joe. He keeps telling me to stop thanking him, but the dude is being pulled in every direction, even in a dark time during this cycle, this horrible time. But thank you, Joe, so much. It's very kind of you and very humble for you to admit all of this. And now that I know you're a sensitive guy, I will be very careful.
Oh, get out of here.
Thank you all for joining us at Live with Lee, and we'll look forward to next week's session. In the meantime, go forth and be honest, tell the truth, and get some good sleep. Thank you.
Amen to that.
Joe, if you can call for just a second, we're going to end the broadcast.